Dipama, Chapter 9, At Home in Strange Realms. Quote, I went back mind moment by mind moment. Dipama developed her supernatural powers under Munindra's tutelage and never demonstrated them except at his request. Such powers are achieved not through insight meditation, but through concentration practices, in which a mind enters a deep state of absorption known as a jhana. While she was doing jhana practice, Dipama could enter any of the 8 classical jhanic states at will, and stay in it as long as she wanted. In the deeper jhanas, bodily processes can sometimes slow to almost a standstill, so it is not necessary to drink, eat, sleep, move, or urinate. Dipama could resolve to enter a specific jhana and wake up or emerge from it at a predetermined time. On one occasion, she resolved to enter the 8th jhana and stay in it for 3 days, 21 hours, 8 minutes, and 3 seconds. She emerged from the jhana exactly to the second that she had predetermined. When she left Burma, Dipama stopped practicing these powers, insisting that they involve ego and are therefore a hindrance to liberation. Munindra concurred. These powers are not important, he said. Enlightenment is important. You need wisdom to use these powers. You don't want to use these powers with ego, because they are not yours. You can't use them and think you're the one who is powerful. This is not wisdom. Jack Engler once asked Dipama if she still possessed the extraordinary powers she had acquired years before while studying with Munindra. No, she said. Could you get them back? Yes, she said, but it would take a long time. How long? Asked Jack, thinking she would reply in terms of months or years. Oh, about 3 days, she replied, if I really practiced. There are said to be 6 higher powers. 5 mundane powers, accessed through the extraordinary degree of concentration in the 4th jhana, and 1 supramundane power, attainable only through insight practice, and considered a mark of full enlightenment. The 5 mundane powers are all found in the shamanic and yogic traditions, and occur spontaneously, to a lesser extent in some individuals. They are said to be supernatural powers, the ability to transform one of the 4 basic elements of the physical world, earth, air, fire, and water, into another. Divine ear, the ability to hear sounds near and far, on earth and in other realms. Divine eye, the ability to see into the future, to see things near and far, on earth and in other realms. Knowledge of one's former births and the previous births of others. Knowledge of the states of mind of other beings, that is, the ability to read or know the minds of others. According to Munindra, Dipama demonstrated each of these powers to him. The following accounts are based on Munindra's recollections. You may not believe it, he said, but it's true. Once Munindra was in his room and he noticed something unusual in the sky outside his window. He looked out and saw Dipama in the air near the tops of the trees, grinning at him and playing in a room she had built in the sky. By changing the air element into the earth element, she had been able to create a structure in midair. Changing denser elements to air produced only slightly less astonishing occurrences. Sometimes Dipama and her sister Hema arrived for interviews with Munindra by spontaneously appearing in his room, and Dipama occasionally left by walking through the closed door. If she was feeling especially playful, she might rise from her chair, go to the nearest wall, and walk right through it. Dipama learned to cook food by making the fire element come out of her hands. She could also change the earth element into the water element, which she demonstrated to Munindra by diving into a patch of ground and emerging with her clothes and hair wet. If she had to walk alone at night, Dipama could duplicate her body, creating a companion for herself so that no one would bother her. Dipama's abilities in this regard were once tested by a third party. Munindra knew a professor of ancient Indian history at Magadh University, who was skeptical about psychic powers. Munindra offered to prove the existence of such powers, and the two of them set up an experiment. The professor posted a trusted graduate student in a room where Dipama was meditating to watch and make sure she didn't leave the room. On the appointed day, the student verified that Dipa Ma never left her meditation posture. And yet, at the very same time, she appeared at the professor's office 10 miles away and had a conversation with him. Dipa Ma and Hema once used their extraordinary powers in tandem to move a bus. One afternoon in Rangoon, they were waiting at a bus stop. When the bus finally arrived, over an hour late, they realized they were going to miss their engagement some distance away. Because it was important to arrive on time, they both began to concentrate and got the bus back on schedule. During the samadhi, absorbed state, Munindra explained, they made resolutions and moved the bus even while sitting in it. They shortened the time and distance. It can be done. The Buddha did this with Angulimala. When Angulimala was trying to kill the Buddha, he kept running after him, but the Buddha didn't move, and still he could not catch him. This was because the Buddha used his powers to make the distance always the same. When the Burmese diplomat U Thant was about to become the new Secretary General of the United Nations, Munindra, knowing that U Thant would give an acceptance speech, asked Dipa Ma to go into the future and remember the content. She recited the speech, and Munindra recorded it. A month later, according to Munindra, U Thant gave the exact speech, word for word, just as Dipa Ma had predicted. Beyond Time and Space by Michelle McDonald. Quote, Dipa Ma said she could go back to the time of the Buddha and listen to his sermons. When I asked her how she did this, she smiled and said, I went back mind moment by mind moment. I must have looked stunned because she smiled and said, Oh, you don't have to do that for Nirvana to happen. Then she just laughed and added, It was really fun. It just takes a lot of concentration. The look in her eyes when she said this, she looked so free, so pure. To See with the Divine Eye by Jack Engler. Quote, Dipa Ma could look inside the body and describe exactly how the brain and heart functioned, with scientific accuracy and at a level that clearly exceeded her own education. She described new devices created in different parts of the world. She would tell Munindra about a new invention, what it looked like, what it was for, where it was kept. Munindra had developed ways of testing his students' abilities, and when he checked up on Dipa Ma's descriptions, he found that they were always 100% accurate. Munindra asked her to see what was going on in the next room to her and describe it to him. He would then verify it. Then he had her systematically extend the power of divine sight to places more and more distant, but places where he could verify the accuracy of her report. She had never been to Bodh Gaya, for instance, and he had her describe it to him, where the Bodhi tree was, what things remained there from antiquity. He had been the temple superintendent for many years, and knew intimate details of the site. End quote. According to some of her students, Dipa Ma could visit the various realms of existence described in Buddhist cosmology, the heaven and hell realms, for example. She would describe the different beings living there and what was happening all around them. Once in a while, she would offhandedly refer to her travels to other dimensions. Heaven Realm by Jack Cornfield. Quote, During the 3-month retreat at Insight Meditation Society, on one of those crystal-clear autumn days in New England when the sky is blue with a few puffy clouds, and the trees are a display of light and flames and color, we took a walk outdoors. We were sitting by a lake on a rock, and the lake was reflecting all these colors. There were a number of people there, and one of them said to Dipa Ma, This must be just like the heaven realms. We knew that she had traveled to the different realms. And she just looked at him and said, No, it's nothing like it at all. It's okay, but it really doesn't even touch it. End quote. Dipa Ma's spiritual powers enabled her to predict her students' futures. Quote, She predicted my teaching career quite elaborately at a time in my life when I wasn't teaching at all, says Joseph Goldstein. I think she saw the whole course of my life. Knowledge of the Future by Michelle Levy. Quote, Towards the end of my 3-month retreat, she looked at me and said, When you go back home, you will teach metta, loving kindness meditation, in hospitals. This statement was puzzling to me, since I hadn't any connection with hospitals, but I thought, okay. I wasn't back home a month before someone from Children's Hospital called, asking if I would come and run the biofeedback center. It was amazing. So I thought, okay, this is the hospital part. This was a children's hospital, and most of the kids coming in had stress-related conditions, migraines, bellyaches, phobias, different things, so I would teach them metta. I was doing biofeedback as the context, but I was really teaching them how to do loving kindness for themselves, and for their critters, and for other kids. I wondered if she sent the job, or just knew it was coming. When I got that phone call, it was like Dipa Ma was calling me to do that. End quote. Dipa Ma was said to have an uncommonly strong ability to communicate telepathically with her students. Beyond Language by Carol Constantian Lazelle. Quote, as my retreat job, I'd been washing dishes at her house for my last 2 weeks. When I told her I was leaving, she offered to do a blessing. She asked me all kinds of grandmotherly type questions, like whether or not I was married and what work I did. Then she said something in Bengali, put her hands on my head, and it was like being hit by a lightning bolt. All of a sudden, I felt as if she knew exactly what was in my mind, and we were having this conversation together that was beyond language. We were communicating on a whole new level, just between the essence of our minds. Pure communication between her consciousness and mine. I felt like I was hit in the head, and in a good way. After the blessing, I had this incredible euphoria. I remember walking in the door of the Insight Meditation Society and feeling like I was walking above the ground. End quote. Mind to Mind by Daniel Butemi. Quote, whenever I came to Dipa Ma with some difficulty in my meditation practice, she would look into my eyes with that tranquil, samadhi-like gaze while I was speaking. Before the translator even began, I would feel a tickling in the back of my brain. Something would go click, and the problem would simply disappear, along with whatever emotional difficulty I might have had with it. I believe she was capable of psychic or telepathic linking, working directly with others' minds. She taught me silently that the answer to any internal problem was in the basic mind state, and not in her words or in any technical adjustment of attention. She gave me the answer to my difficulties by sharing another state of consciousness in which that problem simply didn't exist. It was a sudden, instant shift, like a psychic chiropractic adjustment. End quote. Enduring Smile by Jack Cornfield. I had been studying and training in India for an extended period of time, and was going through a lot of difficulty in my life. I was scheduled to return to the States to teach the 3-month retreat at IMS. On my way out of the country, I decided to stop in Calcutta and see Dipa Ma. It was, I remember, a terribly hot day, 110 degrees and smoggy and dirty. I paid my respects to her, and we spent a little time talking. As I got up to go, she gave me her usual big bear hug, and then she said a blessing. I got down on my knees, which made me about equal to her in height. For her extra special blessing, she would take her hands and stroke her head, and your whole body, blow on you, and say Buddhist prayers at the same time. It seemed like a very, very long blessing. At first it just felt kind of nice, but as she kept going, it started to feel better and better. By the time she was done, everything felt lit up and open, and I was just grinning from ear to ear. Go and teach a good retreat for all those people, she said. Go with my blessings. It was like a grandmother sending you off with her good wishes. I left her place, walked out into the sweltering Calcutta summer, and caught a taxi to Dum Dum Airport. It took about 2 hours to get there, with the guy leaning on the horn the whole way, dodging between rickshaws and traffic and fumes and pollution, and incredible heat and humidity and poverty and filth. Finally, I got to the airport and went through customs, which meant another hour of standing in line with people looking through my stuff and grilling me and stamping my documents. I finally got on my plane and took the 2-hour flight to Bangkok. Bangkok Airport looked like the Los Angeles airport. It was huge. Again, long lines, customs, an hour and a half in a taxi riding through the teeming streets of Bangkok to my hotel. And I did not stop grinning the entire way. The plane ride, long lines, customs, taxi rides, traffic jams, all this. And I'm just sitting there with this big smile on my face. It just would not wear off. It was extraordinary. End quote. A Rain of Blessings by Michelle and Joel Levy. Michelle Levy and her husband Joel asked Dipa-Ma to do a marriage blessing ceremony with them in 1984. Quote, at the end of the ceremony, she looked at us tenderly and said, "A marriage of meditation will befall you." We knelt down, and Dipa-Ma put her hands on our foreheads and gave us a blessing. It felt as if the crowns of our heads were blown off, leaving our heads completely open to all space. Then it was as if she was downloading a transmission directly into our skulls. She poured peace and loving kindness into our open crowns, and there was a deep, sweet melting and welding of souls together. Neither of us had ever felt any sensation like that before. After her blessing, we went for a walk in the woods behind the meditation center. It was a clear, crisp December day without a cloud in the sky. Yet as we were walking through the forest, we heard this sound like rice falling on us. It sounded like hail, all over the woods. We were looking up, but the sky was clear and blue. It was like a rain of blessings. We continued to walk, and a strange distortion began happening in time and place. We walked, and we thought we'd end up very far away, but we came out where we started. It was like going for a walk on a Mobius strip, thinking we would end up somewhere, yet coming back, turned inside out or outside in, and put back together in a magical way. End quote. Dipa-Ma herself reported an unexpected encounter with the paranormal that came about when she said, because she was following the Buddhist precepts. The House from Nowhere by Dipa-Ma. Quote, in Buddhist countries, people observe 8 precepts 4 days a month, and many go to temple on full moon day. One full moon day, a woman friend and I decided to go to the temple. When we left the house, there was just a little bit of rain, but when we got on the bus, it started to rain heavily. By the time we got off the bus, it was pouring, and the road to the temple was flooded. There were people waiting at the temple for us, but we could go no farther because we were shivering, wet, and quite cold. Just then, a car came by and stopped for us. The gentleman in it said there was a very nice new house nearby. He took us in his car to it. The car stopped at the house, which was fully decorated and had a gate in front of it. We went inside and up the stairs, where we decided to take shelter until the rain had stopped. We waited about 15 minutes, then hurried to the temple. As soon as we came in, people said, "Oh, you are all wet. How did that happen?" We told them how we got down from the bus. It was raining heavily, and the road was flooded, and that we had found a house and had taken shelter in it. We described the double-story, newly built house to them. But the local people and the monks of the temple, who every day went on alms rounds in the area, said, "We have never seen such a house in the place you describe it." Well, of course there could be some mistake, I told them, but we did wait there for 15 to 20 minutes, so there is a house there. There was some discussion back and forth, and finally we said, "All right, let's go and see." We stayed and listened to the Dharma talk, and then on our way home went to try and find the house. We went back to the area, but could not find it again. How could it be, we wondered, that we had gone inside a house that was not there? We tried another street, but still we couldn't find anything. The next day, the monk at the temple said he had tried looking for the house where we described it, but he could not find it either. We went back and looked again, still without success. There was a big discussion about this. We finally came to the conclusion that because we were observing Sila, moral precepts, practicing the Dharma, and had prayed, "May the gods and goddesses protect us from all kinds of harm," they had come to our aid and had made a shelter to get us out of the rain. This is why I tell you to always try and observe the precepts, because surely someone will help you and protect you from all kinds of harm. This is from my own experience. There were 2 of us, so I know it just wasn't a dream or my imagination. The gods and goddesses really came to our aid." End quote. A student who heard Diploma tell the story remembers the response that followed. "It's true," by Leslie Fowler. Quote, "I liked this small white bundle coming into the hall and telling us stories from her practice to encourage us. One was about a house that appeared miraculously in the rain to shelter her because she was a true servant of the Dharma. When we laughed, gently humoring our celebrated teacher, she gazed at us, as uncomprehending of our rational skepticism as we of her faith. It's true, she said, and we were silent." End quote and end of section.